And welcome to a time-delayed episode of Life Support Live. Hello, what is this? This is the weekly live show that explores that Star Trek can help us to boldly go in our own lives to better ourselves and the rest of humanity.
And whoever was supposed to update the frame. Okay.
Oh, God. Whoops. Let me do that while you're talking. Thank you, Larry.
You can do that on the run. Hey, everybody.
God, what a morning. There we go.
This is called, you know what? I think this is, there we go. I think this is the perfect day to have at least the front of that. And there's hopefully a few of you in the audience. Well, there's some of you in the chat where they're like, "Shut up and just give away the damn Blu-ray today, Larry." That's what I'm going to do later on. But yeah, I was given the chance. Hi, everybody. Maybe we should say who we are first. Hey.
Yeah. That would. Oh, and your line, Larry.
What do you mean my line? You started.
As a famous starship captain once said, and.
Yes, you say it first, then I tell.
I did. I said my part. Okay, well let's pretend. Let's start from scratch. This is the weekly show that explores how Star Trek can help us to boldly go in our own lives to better ourselves and the rest of humanity.
Yes, that latter part is what a famous starship captain once said. And as another famous starship captain once said, wherever our mission takes us or doesn't take us. We'll obviously try to have a little fun along the way. I'm paraphrasing the great Captain Mike there, by the way.
If we could get ourselves out of space dock, which we are, this is the perfect episode to give away some lower decks because we're having a little trouble
getting. We're going to be lucky to have a fifth or sixth contact after this.
Yeah, we're trying to fire up those impulse engines, and I think we're only at thrusters. Hello, everyone. I am psychologist Dr. Ali Matu.
And I am Dr. Trek Larry Nemechek, and I'm beginning to wonder if either one of us is a real doctor.
We'll leave it for you to decide. We are a real live weekly Star Trek show, although it might not seem like it at this juncture. Folks, we have a special episode today. Larry's over there. Larry is giving away something, and in the spirit of that giveaway, our episode is all about humor and conflict, how humor can diffuse conflict. So let us know in the comments, what is your favorite example from Star Trek of someone using humor to diffuse conflict? And while you're sharing those episodes, Larry, what is that beautiful brand new Blu-ray you got there in your hands? What's going on here with this?
This is, the Blu-ray and also DVD and Steelbook edition in limited numbers of the first season of Lower Decks came out this week. It came out Tuesday, and CBS Home Entertainment was very kind to allow a lot of the fandom world, podcasters and bloggers and all, to and multi-streamers, YouTubers, to give away. Actually, a lot of people got a chance to give away 3 copies, as did I, and it's all through CBS. So like we collect winners however we do it and then send them the mailing addresses and it'll all come centrally from CBS. So I gave away 2 on Tuesdays Live, on Trekland Tuesdays Live, and I had a third and I was debating and I thought, okay, fine, I'll just do it on Life Support.
I'll just do it. Just do it, Jim.
I'll just do it. And what's cool is, can you see the sticker there? There's almost 2 hours of exclusives, which we've never seen what that looks like with an animated series before. Yeah. So there's a ton. And as I realized on Tuesday, 10 half hours is only 5 hours. So there's almost half as much bonus material as there is episodic, originals. Do that on a 26 episode season from a classic show. So anyway, there's almost 13 hours of bonus content.
Well, and that bonus content must have all been filmed during COVID, or at least most of it.
Well, it was animation.
No. I mean, there's a lot of bonus. Is that 2 hours of bonus, like
yes,
extra footage or interviews?
It's both. There's everything from there's an exclusive trailer for the rise of I always want to say Invicta. I can't say.
I thought you were going to say Rise of Skywalker. I'm like, I don't think so, Larry.
No. Her home. I've gone blank on her name. It's not Invicta, which makes no sense.
Right.
Someone's going to say it in the chat, and I keep doing it over and over. Anyway, there's a trailer of her holotherapy,
Oh, cool.
but there's that. There is a special behind the scenes thing of a different theme for each of the 10 episodes. Like one will be about writing, one will be about putting things into animation, one will be there's a whole special about Easter eggs and in jokes and behind the scenes jokes of the whole season. And there's a deleted an animatic is like an animation rough where it looks like it's like rough, but it's animated with the voice track. There is a deleted scene, a Boimler deleted scene, and there are some extended scenes. So there's a ton of stuff, and it is animation, so it's kind of new as far as what we're used to seeing on DVD. So there's the commercial. It hardly needed one. So for everybody who held off, didn't stream it, but you were saying I always buy the hard material, the hard media discs. Here's your chance, and here's your chance to maybe win one. And everybody who just says I just wanted to get a whatever, they do have steelbooks. They do have DVDs. This is a blue, and that's what we're giving away today.
So Larry, when are you sending me my copy?
Oh, they're gone. Remember when they announced the show? Okay, so these were sold out 2 days later. No, I'm kidding.
I'll expect mine.
It's gonna
special
take more
delivery on Sunday.
Skype call to line one of those up, Bucky.
No, I would say I still love physical media, and some of the only physical media that I still buy is Star Trek. That's kind of that's kind of it. And one of the big reasons is not only to have something to watch if the internet goes out, but the bigger reason is actually what you said.
This morning?
Like this morning. The biggest reason is the bonus footage. I love director's commentaries. I love the behind the scenes interviews. I love the marathon interviews that a co-host of mine ran for some of the Blu-rays. I love all that stuff, and unfortunately,
it's almost as good as when certain podcasters and multi-streamers do watch-along shows now.
Almost. It's
good.
not quite there. It doesn't have that panache of live that these live shows have. But a lot of that content is just not available on
it's
streaming.
like the press release and everything. See, it's like wow.
Wow, even a physical media press release. When was the last time you
I
saw
got
that?
one in an email, but this is always shipped because you never know, who's not on email. That's getting it.
As Jared says, I've had a lifelong love affair with audio commentary, and I love all that bonus content. And I've got my Paramount Plus subscription. I'm probably never going to let it go because of Nick Jr. My daughter just loves watching Peppa Pig, and she loves watching all. So, like, I barely use the Paramount Plus. It's mostly my daughter who watches it. But and I've got my Netflix. I got all that. But like for bonus features, for the behind the scenes, that's all still in physical media. I'm
gonna read this real fast.
Go for it, Larry. Go for it. Oh, I thought you were going to read it out loud. Oh. Larry was doing very professional press work right over there. The only place I've really seen some of the behind-the-scenes media included in the streaming, some iTunes releases have it, and some Disney Plus releases have it. I've seen that actually with some of the Star Wars releases on Disney Plus.
That's not Paramount Plus.
It's not a mountain of content. It's not. It's not. All right, back to life support live. Wait. So Larry, how are you giving it away? How's this work?
So here's the thing. So I mean, if you're with me right now,
I'm barely there. I'm kind of with you.
Barely here. Well, obviously you're an exception.
Yes.
I did promote this. So here's the thing. If you happen to see across my channels, like we do Trekland Tuesdays live on Tuesdays at 1 Pacific, 4 Eastern, on these same exact over these same Trekland channels, they just say on network TV. And if you put your name in for the Tuesday drawing, I've kept you on. So that's a lot of you were. So then I blitzed all day yesterday afternoon and evening and overnight and this morning on my Twitter and Facebook and even Instagram. So had more people jump into the drawing. So I'm apologies if you're. It's not something you can do right now because I had to set it up. I have a random picker. I've got about 40, 50 names in that sucker, and we had 2 winners on Tuesday, and it's probably increased by about a fourth just in the last day. So that's what it is. So when we're ready to do it, I just have to hit a button, and it will pop me up a name.
Cool. And if folks haven't entered already,
yeah, I have to stop and pull their name out and put it in. So
okay.
Yeah. So probably, everything I did, I said a cutoff of 9 a.m., which was like an hour.
Okay, that sounds good to me. You
so
snooze, you lose.
Yeah,
folks,
giving things away live on the show. We gave away the Spock mindfulness book here. So
yes,
we
did.
That again from
yeah,
time
yeah.
to time.
And folks, this is one of the reasons to always be following my friend Dr. Trek. And follow everything Trekland, as I did this week. And Larry, you didn't even notice I popped in on Tuesday.
I noticed it the minute I went back and looked at the chat. You were so quiet. You were so therapeutic.
I don't want to
yelling from the couch or whatever.
I sometimes I like just observing and just letting you do your thing.
You lurker.
I like to be cloaked sometimes. I like to be like a bird of prey. So Larry, this episode
nursemaided by a Romulan who will later turn into a Cardassian who will disguise as a Jordan.
Yes. And as a Maquis who's infiltrated Starfleet. This is one of those episodes that we're doing right now that at least we are attempting to.
Apparently has no point at all.
No. Yeah. What's the point, Jim?
What's it about? It's about 43 minutes, Michael. Okay.
So this is one of those episodes that wasn't anywhere near our original list of topics that we were going to address in Life Support Live. And it's also one of those episodes where, as we started to talk about it and talk about the connection with Lower Decks, there's so many examples that we can use. So many, in fact, that we had to kind of hone in our list of humor.
I was going to say, I said, how about some kind of humor? And you start rattling off all these stripes. I'm like, let's pick one. I do not want this,
You're like, save something for the sequel, Ollie. So humor and conflict seem like a really great theme here. And as we always do with Life Support Live, we try to have some type of focus to life right now and the strange world we're in right now. There's a lot of conflict right now. So yes, there's that. But there's also finding humor as a way of dealing with the daily conflict, the daily stressors, the daily setbacks that we all have, that there are so many of right now, wherever you are in the world, wherever you are in this pandemic. There's humor is one of those things that we need to help us with this. And there's so many wonderful examples in Star Trek of this. So let's open up that what is our first segment called? The briefing room. Let's open up the briefing room.
I was about to say, see, there is a structure to this, but I'm not even going to try to fool people.
Larry, it's been a long night and a short morning. Is that I don't know. It's been a minute.
Long walk, short pier, something about a short dress and a long something.
Ooh, that might be a different show.
The thing from Chuck. Yeah, there was a rock song. Something. Okay. Anyway, proceed, Governor.
Yeah. So let's talk about these different examples we've got in Star Trek, and there's some wonderful ones. And Larry, you actually you brought up a lot of examples from the original series. Well,
so here's my thing. This is an interesting topic, and I'm sure the chat will set me straight. But there's something about humor. We think about the humor shows, especially the original series, and there are the ones from later episodes too that are more lighthearted. But I really feel like it's not so much that we've had any token humor shows, although you might say even in Discovery, the mind's crazier than Dark of Men, whatever. It's the Rainn Wilson show, the Harry Mudd show from Discovery's first season, where they're constantly resetting the time loop.
Yeah, it's a great episode.
it's a great episode. It's a lot of people's favorite ones of
Yep.
season one.
Yep.
But and it's humorous, but even there, it's really specialized. But so it exists. The humor show exists, but most of the time with Star Trek, which is more a case of reality, the humor comes hopefully, and it does work because it comes out of the situation.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And there's an old thing about acting, there's an old thing about writing that try to go against the grain. If it's a drama you're in, try to find the comedy. If it's a comedy, try to find by the classic definitions, try to find the comedy in it. And whether you're writing or acting or directing or whatever.
Libby's got a comment with that. Conflict is good for humor, and humor is good for conflict.
And Libby knows because those are two of the non-canon rules of acquisition. No, wait, that's that's War and Peace. Okay. Seemingly contradictory. No, but it's very true. It's going against the grain. It's what real life is like. Real life is very seldom, aside from this last 20 minutes, real life is very seldom all comedy or all drama. It's a mix, and that just brings a. So my point is, looking back at all the episodes, a lot of us can remember, depending on what our sweet spot is in Star Trek, we can remember funny moments maybe in an otherwise non-drama show. I'm just saying that in the style of the times in the 60s, while we had that in the original series all the time, thank you, Dr. McCoy, including the movies, we had the more lighthearted episodes and some of those I pulled. It wasn't so easy to do that with all the later series. And then we didn't just say humor, we actually tried to parameterize this down to, you like that? Humor in conflict, or humor as a tool to diffuse conflict, or whatever.
So, one thing I want to say,
I found myself leaning into heavily, though, was the original series. Is what I'm trying to.
And is that what you're trying to say? Okay. One thing that was coming to mind as you were describing that is the most I have ever laughed in my professional role is when I was in a psychiatric emergency room. And that was
sound very professional, Doctor.
No, what it was is high intensity, high conflict, high stress. Like the most conflict stress I've had. And when we were hanging out, all the healthcare providers, we made jokes, we laughed, we told stories, not about what was happening here, but about just about life. And what I learned from that moment is we were using humor to deal with the high conflict situation we were in. I've never laughed more.
The high intensity, the high stakes.
Yes. I've never laughed more than I ever have in that role. I've also never cried as much as I have in that role. But there is something, and I'll talk about this in the counselor's log.
It's the battlefield mentality.
It's
the going in the trenches. Whoever you worked closely with in stressful situations are the people you bond with forever, no matter what happens to you later.
Yes, absolutely. Going through very difficult situations is highly bonding, whether it is conflict and war, whether it is a psychiatric emergency room, or hazing in fraternities. A lot of research has found. I mean, we don't advocate for that, but one of the reasons why people seem to bond so much is because they're being put through this tough experience together. So yeah, you're absolutely right, and this gets us back to the original series. Larry, there's some really great episodes here. I think like when we talk about humor, the very first example that comes up for a lot of people is this right here, is The Trouble with Tribbles.
But very specifically, I pulled this because humor in conflict. There is an actual arc running through that show of Kirk and Barris bashing heads all the way through. Barris, the Federation Undersecretary for Agricultural Affairs in this quadrant. I want to go, the Alpha? The whole, he meant sector, but it's one of those things. Evolution of terminology. But the way that Kirk would deal with his wanting to strangle Barris by trying to be humorous. Mr. Barris, I've never questioned the orders of any representative of the Federation or Starfleet. Until now. That's exactly what that moment was supposed to be. But so there you go. I mean, again, we could go on forever about humor in Star Trek. Of the moment humor organic to the characters and humor lathered on by the writers or whatever, just gratuitous, whatever. But since we picked and then what the application was, but since you specifically came up with this topic, which is great, that limited it down still. But yeah, you can go to the most famous comedy show of Star Trek of all time and find a moment even for humor being used in conflict.
And if folks haven't seen it yet, we have a full watch along with the Trouble with Tribbles and Trials and Tribulations. Yeah,
yes.
We did the 2-part watch along, which is a lot of fun. Larry, when we did that watch along, I was watching it from a very different perspective, much more. It's a watch along. We're commenting as we're kind of going. And the script is just so exceptionally well written for that episode and well acted by all the characters. And moments like that, like where kind of a comma or an emphasis is placed, it's not only just great writing and great acting, but it's a great example of how humor can diffuse or redirect people in conflict and in negotiations, and how it can diffuse tension. Kirk,
I could just as easily have Kirk and Koloth up there.
Yes, absolutely.
And line. Yeah.
And those moments are I'll talk about this in the counselor's log, but they do quite literally diffuse tension. And it's something that is critical in these kind of negotiation types of situations, or just tough situations in general. I have a friend who told me that he was bullied a lot as a kid, and he learned very quickly, if I can make the bullies laugh, they won't bully me. And I kind of think about that.
And what famous stand-up comic is he today? This sounds
like right. I know it sounds like every stand-up comic, right? But his words, I think, are kind of true to these kinds of moments that Kirk has had, and there's so many moments like this that we see in the original series.
Yes. Well, and then there's a couple more. In fact, there's a whole chain here that was almost. I may make it a mini K3 later, but then the second season was like the blossoming of this. And I Mud is the sequel.
That's what I was. Yeah. Yep. That's what I was going to bring up.
There you go. Boom. And you've got Spock getting to be nonsense spouting here. In the guise of trying to illogicize Norman the android here. And then it gets crazy. It's one of the most surreal moments of any Star Trek, much less the original series. The whole, all the stuff they do to blow up his logic circuits. But this was a sequel to, as much as controversial as the Harry Mudd character became to some people currently, where they would go, a lot of younger fans watching like Mudd's Women and going, "Oh my God, he's a pimp! Oh my God, this is so 60s! This was so non-PC now." He's not a pimp, and we've been through this. He was a wyver, which was women of free will trying to get out and get mated up, like the Seattle logging wives, the basis of the show Here Come the Brides, and Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, the musical. But the point here is that the show had some comedic moments, but the first Mudd show was very dark, and it's about drug dealing and the darker side of life and the downside of life. And then these women got matched up with men, and were they going to really fit, or was there going to be something, anyway. And I Mudd had a little bit of that, but it was so much more wackier and lighter. And but that's a moment, again, using humor in conflict, where they've got it's the old outsmart the computer, but this time, instead of being like dry and on the nose, it was really a wacky, what is it, a barrage of illogic?
A barrage of illogic.
There's a phrase from that show. I've gone blank on it. But anyway, they, or maybe it's a Spock line. The resulting barrage of illogic was enough to fill in the blank. But no, and it was fun for the audience. But it was a tool in conflict. It was actually like, not warfare, but next door to it. It was them
right.
versus the androids. Anyway.
Right.
And then I threw one more in to boot on this, which again was another conflict situation. It was just played so broadly, which very famously was, if you're ready for it, a piece of action.
I'm ready for it, and this is a wonderful one too.
And I just used we never think about this last scene where Kirk's on the pool table. He's doing his gangster routine, and
this is a piece of the action.
Piece of the action with all the gangsters, the South Side territory, the North Side territory, and all the little mini bosses. And and hey, we're gonna cut you guys in for a piece of our action. But the whole thing is so ridiculous. But it's technically, and that was a situation that they almost Trials and Tribulations started off maybe being, instead of a Tribbles revisit, a funny piece of the action revisit. And James Comack, who directed that show, wound up being a comedy director on Courtship of Eddie's Father and doing a lot more TV than that. It was one of his first things to direct. That was just a K-theory off the top of my head, but it's easy to, and of course there's moments all through the original series, and those are the classic comedy shows of the original series. But for this theme today in particular, all of those were times where a character was intentionally using humor, and piece of the actions where Kirk fakes the Fizbin game to get out of captivity, right, with their captors, and it's goofy and played for laughs. But that's what we're talking about today, so it's a little over the top. But yeah.
Well, speaking of Kirk and Spock, after Trials and or not Trials and Tribulations, after the Trouble with Tribbles, the next example that popped up in my head was, of course, the most obvious example from the movies, and that's Star Trek 4. And
so I did outthink you. Okay, yeah.
Well, when it comes to the original series, you often outthink me, Larry. This episode, not this episode, this movie, and in particular this moment. This is the moment where Kirk and Spock are getting a ride, and it's the wonderful moment of he did too much LDS back in the 60s. Is that the line, or back in the 70s? Yeah. So not only is it hilarious, but that moment is a great example of how our principal cast here, of how the whole crew is trying to use humor to diffuse the conflict of being a stranger in a strange land. Mm-hmm. They are completely out of place. They must still be using money here. They're
out of place and afraid of giving themselves away, revealing themselves too.
They're afraid of revealing themselves. They don't have money. The bird of prey is they could be found out. They have to find these whales. There's a lot of the humor that they use, and especially Kirk. Like Kirk, Kirk isn't necessarily trying to be funny, but the way he is trying to be honest in these situations, like, watch where you going, dumbass. Well, double dumbass on you. That line always cracks me up. But it speaks to this idea of trying to be honest, and how humor often comes from that honesty of really just kind of saying what's on your mind.
And desperation, which harks back to your in the trenches moment in the emergency room. Yeah.
Yes.
Because they're all very desperate. The bottom line is they're trying to save the world one more time, but this time we're doing with time travel and whales and goofy fish out of water situations. By the way, the pickup scene that I pulled from specifically was not the LDS moment. It's the "Do you guys like Italian?" No. Yes.
Oh, right. No. Yes. No. Yes. No.
And
yes.
I do. And so do you. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Which is it's funny, but they're not trying to be funny. The humor is coming from the conflict of them trying to fit in and completely trying to play it cool when they are not at all. I think that's one reason why the movie works so well, is the characters are being so earnest, and they're being so they are being themselves, just in the 80s on Earth, and they completely stick out. And they're so desperately trying not to.
Anyway, so I don't know. I always try to figure out. We're all and the chat's blowing up with things I know, and I'm trying not to get totally behind. But what I try to do with the images sometimes is maybe not go. I mean, it's a mix of the very obvious, like Tribbles, and maybe some things we think about. And if I don't know if we want to move on or whatever. And the animated's not to leave them out. I always think of the animated as just another chapter of the originals. So, but not to leave. I mean, they had some funny episodes. There's the Kirk is a jerk, with the computer. The rec deck, which is the early holodeck, is throwing vegetables. I mean, there's a lot of funny moments all through that episode. Practical Joker is the name of the episode. But it was more like a malfunction and they're having to overcome it. So I didn't really look at that as humor in conflict. But again, all through the animated, like all through Star Trek, there are humorous moments dropped into plots. Give me a moment, I could probably just
Yeah. Charlotte says, "Give me a moment, I could probably act out the entire movie."
We'll have to schedule a special watch along for that, and we'll.
I'm sure this has been done, Larry. I'm sure you probably know people who've done this, but this would probably be a hilarious like impromptu stage production if people just do Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home. Like someone could play the whales, Like,
I want to say that was the token skit to cover the costume judging, probably all through 86 and 87.
Yeah. See, there
the
you
old
go.
school tradition.
There
yeah.
you go. Everything that's happened has been. What's the line from Battlestar? Everything that's happened has happened. All of this has happened before and will happen again. Whatever. I'm butchering it. Sorry, folks. I do need more coffee. Sorry, Larry. You were talking about the animated series.
The chat, by the way, does not believe that we've been drinking coffee. By the way. They thought someone said I think they started the drinking game without us.
Folks. This is what happens when you are a sleep deprived dad, and also when you keep your co-host waiting with plans for the next day into the wee hours of the night. This is the result of
That's true. I was actually Scott is a witness that he's not with us today, but yeah. I had 42 different ideas.
Yeah. Larry's like, so Ollie, which one do you think's good? 2 hours later, Ollie, 2 hours later, are you there? And then my response, I fell asleep on the couch. It was the most dad moment of my life. Oh my gosh. Where are those nuclear vessels? We are looking for nuclear vessels.
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 Vessels. Damn it, Jim. I'm a Californian, not a Russian. Okay, folks. Larry and I actually thought of the same example for TNG. This is
you did.
We did.
I sent these all blind. So
we have a 100% mind meld here so far. All the examples you brought up are the only examples I thought of too, Larry. So this is great.
Especially, well, again, tuned down to this theme.
Yes.
Humor as a tool used to diffuse conflict.
Because you could say like a fistful of datas, right? That like there's a lot of humor there, but humor in conflict, I don't know. I mean, that's like a hilarious episode. But the episode that came to my mind
I did think of one other one from Next Gen after this, but go ahead.
Is it Mass? Because I hate that episode.
No. What got you to laugh? Okay. No,
I laughed because
I thought of it's very memeified. It's Picard butchering Shakespeare to look like he's wooing Loxana.
that moment.
Yes, from the Ferengi.
Oh, that's actually a really great episode. Let's talk about that example real quick, actually.
Yeah.
So Loxana and Deanna are on the Ferengi ship.
Ferengi, and he's trying to get them back. And,
right.
And the Ferengi they're trying to persuade the Ferengi that it's his woman. And so, after all the jokes about Loxana chasing Picard, now he has to chase her back badly. And the meme of that's all from that scene. And he's quoting Shakespeare badly, and it's very funny for us, but of course they're all, and it's funny for the crew actually, but it achieves the desired effect, and he wins, or they get him back.
And it's not trying to be funny again. It's funny to us, but in the moment, and it might be funny to other people on the bridge who are witnessing it. But
wow, you pulled that one.
Hey, there's a little something called Google that really helped me to pull that image up real quick. Thank you, Google. I should probably not say that out loud. That might activate someone's assistant somewhere. But anyways, in this moment, he's not trying to be funny, although people on the bridge are like, you actually see, right? Jonathan Frakes. Look at number one
Mm-hmm.
right there in the corner. Let me make that a little bit bigger. If you look at his face, he is kind of laughing, like, "Oh my goodness." He's not. Picard's not trying to be funny, but there is humor in what he is doing, and it
Well,
takes us.
it's a great moment if you look at it objectively. What that means is Picard loves his Shakespeare, but Picard is not Sir Patrick.
Yes.
It's like Picard knows the Shakespeare, but he's not an actor.
Yes. 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 Good.
And he's racked by actually having to act like he not only act like he's a Shakespearean actor spouting lines, but he's acting like he cares about Loxana enough to go here. And he can't pull either one off. So, yeah.
Charlotte has a very important point, Larry, which is, excuse you, Larry, Sir Patrick is incapable of butchering Shakespeare.
But Sir Patrick is completely capable of acting like he is a character who is butchering Shakespeare. That's all I'm saying.
So you see, Charlotte, we are not merry men. So there's one more example I want to get to, and then there's just been a flood of TNG examples of humor and conflict that the comment section has brought up that I want to bring up. But one more, the one that you and I were thinking of, Larry, and before I actually go to that, what was the name of the episode we were just talking about? I'm blanking on this name.
Menage a Trois.
There we go. Now, moving forward a bit into the seasons, Rascals. Now, this is a wonderful episode.
Which is a cringy episode for a lot of people, but there are still wonderful comic moments.
There are. I mean, I don't understand why people not like this episode?
Well, there's a basic premise that how the hell do a few Ferengi on a bird of prey take over the entire Enterprise, which is a stupid premise.
Don't worry about that. Let's just enjoy the journey.
And the let's have a thing happen. Let's have a vortex happen to people's DNA that youthifies them. I mean, that takes adults and makes them kids. And
I understand.
Yes.
And at the same time, it gives us Jean-Luc Picard pretending that Riker is his father, and thank you, number one. He's my number one dad.
And the fact that we got David, I can't believe I know the name, David Tristan Burke, who's the kid that played his nephew in Family, is playing him as, he's a couple of years older by the time they shoot this show, and he's like a lot taller than he was when he was a little tussle-headed kid in Family. But it was a great show. But that moment is the moment that Riker desperately is trying to get around his Ferengi captor there.
Yes, right here.
Comes out with the rotating Framazam. He makes a joke out of Tech Talk, out of Tech the Tech.
Yes.
They go meta on a Star Trek trope and use it.
Oh my gosh, and it's hilarious.
And you can tell Frakes has like the lines are on a card right above.
It's a wonderful moment because it is making fun of teching the tech and all the technobabble in Star Trek, but it's also one of those things where he is as Riker, as William Riker, he's probably trying not to laugh too in the moment when he's saying that, and as Jonathan Frakes, he's probably trying not to laugh. And if there were other bridge officers around him, they would also probably find it hilarious. But he's using, because of that disconnect between Ferengi and humans, he's able to sort of get away with it. And to everyone else, it would be funny, but it is something that is helping him to manage this conflict. And it's also something that Jean-Luc uses in that moment of he's my number one dad. And because they are the size of children with the minds of adults, they can sort of get away with different things that...
it's another fish out of water situation,
Yes.
which is a lot of comedy comes out.
Yeah, I was just watching...
fish out of your own water body is what...
I was watching Thor Ragnarok, and the funniest bits of Thor are always the fish out of water scenes. Like, fish out of water is always mwah when it comes
Comedy
to
gold.
Comedy gold. That's right. There's Larry, I want to bring up some of these.
People have been known to create entire movies or even series out of it.
You're kidding me. This is
Yes.
We need to get this to Hollywood. This is a
I
great
mean,
idea.
I
Million
know.
dollar idea, Larry. Um,
I Dream of Genie, Mr. Ed, Bewitched.
Mr. Ed
Yes,
is not a series I've thought about in a very long time. Um, let's talk about some of these
of course,
examples.
of course.
There's a lot of TNG
Hmm.
examples that have been coming up in the comment section. So uh, Christina or Christiana said, I'm sorry about that. Q gave Data the ability to laugh, forgot the context around that though. And so this was more of a gift he gave Data so he could
Hmm.
experience what it's like. But speaking of Q, there's a lot of great examples of
Oh, right,
Q.
right, right. Oh,
Um,
Q. Yeah, in conflict. Sure, yeah.
so Melanie said Q had a sinister sense of humor. He still does, as we'll probably see in Picard season 2.
Sometime we
Spoilers.
need to do a Q theme episode
Oh,
because the arc of Q is very interesting, and it's very much like Q's one of the things that survived the early crazy part of the show with
hmm.
and then to Michael and then onto the other series when he popped up.
Larry,
But
I'm gonna
and
just
Lorax and now apparently Picarding it.
Larry, I'm gonna make a quick note of that. Whoosh!
Mhm. Okay.
We should definitely do that. That's a good
That was
idea.
a Q, and you need to make it tighter though.
Yeah.
You need to.
Whoosh!
It's
No,
not
that was too
this.
tight. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
that's
not that.
it's just that.
It's not.
Yeah.
There's no wind up in pitch. It is a whoosh. Uh,
Yes, and you know the technical name for that.
no, is it whoosh whoosh?
No, that's technically called a Q flash.
A Q flash. Well, we
That's what
also get a different Q flash when he becomes human and appears naked. That's a different Q
which
flash.
he filmed actually naked.
Wow. Of course he did.
That's not a body double. That's John, and of course, yeah, they cleared the set like any. But he's like, nope, we're not. I'm gonna do it.
Of course. Of course he
Yeah,
did. John Delancey in the flesh.
he's
We
still with us. Bopping
speaking
off.
of naked. Charlotte says TNG and Naked Now, total ripoff of Naked Time. One would say a sequel, but I always laugh when Picard's like, "Not now, Doctor," when she's hitting on him.
Yes.
It's another moment where it's conflict and it comes across as humorous, but to the characters in the moment, it's not funny. They're just being honest
Mhm.
in the moment. There's some more examples of humor here from TNG. What were hold on, I bookmarked them, Larry. Give me a moment here.
Sorry.
Jared said, "Of course, I'm not a merry man." Another Q episode where they are all in the Robin Hood story.
Although if we say conflict, I think that's you're gonna have to say that's Worf in conflict with his own frustration.
Yes, yes, it's like an internal conflict.
Which, if we open that door, then we're back to everything. Is everything fits. Any mention of comedy now is gonna fit again.
Linda has an example. I think my two favorite funny scenes are with Data. Data's day. Beverly teaches Data how to dance, but it's tap dancing, and he needs ballroom for the wedding. And then in theory, Data's boyfriend program. So there's a lot of moments where there's a lot of humor with what Data says, and Data is sort of the punchline in a lot of those moments. And the conflict there is not so much interspecies or interstellar, but it's the conflict between the rest of the crew and Data and the miscommunication or the misunderstanding there. It's more that I don't know if that's always conflictual as much as it is just miscommunication, but there are some hilarious moments
You're
there.
going back to like man versus God, man versus machine, man versus man versus nature. Your classic, yeah. And I'm not trying to be sexist. I'm just. What do we say now? Do we say human versus God,
Yeah,
human
human.
versus machine? Is that what we say?
Yeah.
I haven't had a college class in a few years, so I don't know what the lit kids teachers are teaching now. But anyway,
Chris brought up an example that I always love when I watch it. I forgot about this in our prep, Larry. Chris says favorite humor conflict moment: Star Trek Six. McCoy informs Chang during his trial that his current medical condition, that aside from a touch of arthritis, pretty good. And a lone Klingon bursts out laughing. I love that. Yeah, that one Klingon's like, "Ha."
Obviously,
And
nobody nobody on second unit was directing the extras to be in.
and McCoy smiles. He loves getting, and McCoy's like, yeah, like, hey, someone gets it.
Even here.
Oh man, oh man. Larry, we've got some. Oh, and Jared said, surely Cupid is the best example of humor in conflict.
Which is the Merry Man, which is the Robin Hood
Yep,
episode.
yep, yep,
Yeah.
yep. We had some great examples from TNG, and we've got some great examples from DS9. Speaking of Worf, when Worf says, when Worf says, "Death to the opposition," and take me out to the holosuite. That's another. It's a little bit of a fish out of water situation where this 24th century cast of characters are playing very much a old Earth game of baseball against these
Hmm.
Vulcans. There's a lot of humor that emerges from them trying to play this game, and it's funny to us. I mean, there's conflict between the Vulcans and Cisco's crew, but it's mostly funny to us because we know these characters and we know how this game's supposed to be played, and it's more of that fish out of water stuff happening again.
Yes. Yes. I'm sorry. I'm catching up the chat.
Catch up,
Uh,
Larry.
yeah. Well, you jumped to DS9, so there are two characters. See, here's part of the problem. There are two characters, especially that I can think of using humor to diffuse situations. And you mentioned one, I did the other, but there are so many examples. And finding something that looked so, I just didn't pull a picture of either one
Well,
at late morning. Yes.
let me see if I can pull up one of the character that I think is one of the best examples here from.
Well, you do that, and I'll say, well, and it's funny how a lot of these cases we keep coming back to the other person, the one out of the humanity commenter person.
Oh, sure.
So, and although in that one case it was organic to Riker and Picard that we mentioned, but we got off on date a little bit. But on DS9, I think of Quark, and I think of Garak.
Yes. Yes.
Especially since they found, Quark was always the underdog, took that mentality on. And so the underdog, it's kind of like the kid being bullied at school who tries to use humor to get out of, and Garak is the inquisitor, the tinker. Okay. Or just get them both with one. I don't know about
This is a
just
great.
both observing Rom going off here. I don't know about the.
Isn't this the holodeck recreation of Quark that Garrick created? Or
Yes.
yeah. So I think these characters are wonderful examples, and not only do they both have probably my favorite scene in all of DS9 is
The
Garrick and Quark talking about root beer, and as an analogy to humans in the Federation. Not only is that one of the greatest scenes, but these two characters are just such a delight. And
And it was a rare time they got to have a scene together.
yes, they don't often get to. It's a little bit like playing with matter and antimatter. These characters are just like, you got to be careful when you bring them together. Sparks can fly, and by sparks I mean rocks falling in the bridge when they're shot at. Which, if no one knows about the rocks in a bridge,
The ceiling rocks.
yeah. It's a great.
People
look
go
it
on,
up.
but I go, it's just like fried insulation in the hull. That's all. It's like people just love talking about the rocks, and I'm like, it's like burn your house, throw a hole in your roof, and see what.
That's a great texture, not trivia. If it's like hull insulation, I like that. But Garrick, I think is probably one of the best examples of this idea of humor and conflict. Garrick is a very tragic character to me. Garrick has gone through a lot of trauma. Garrick has lost a lot. His connection to his home, to his family, to his people. He is the lone Cardassian early on in the show, on the space station, where he's surrounded by Bajorans who really vilify him. He is seen by the enemy, distrusted, and it's kind of like that bullies example I brought up earlier. One of the ways he copes with his trauma, with his loss, with the really difficult things he's gone through is humor. Frequently with Julian Bashir, but even with my favorite episode of DS9 in the Pale Moonlight. Wow, a lot of my favorite moments of DS9 involve Garrick. I did not that didn't connect in for me before.
That's so twisted. As it's like something a clinical psychologist would say.
Yeah, we got to find one of them and ask them what that might mean. What does that say about me?
Anybody know where a real doctor?
Hello, I'm looking for a real doctor here. A Jean-Luc Picard.
Yeah.
Tapestry has a great moment of humor right there. Hey, folks, I did that for you.
Oh.
Tapestry.
Almost too late here, but okay.
So, what was I talking about? Garrick in the Pale Moonlight, he uses humor he tries to use humor to deflate some of the conflict with Sisko, and Sisko's just not having it. And you see at the end when Garrick, says his speech that oh, you will have your war. Oh, the Romulans will come into this. And he sort of lays it all out there for him. But you see his attempts at using humor, and it doesn't always land and doesn't always deliver, but that's one of his main tools that he uses to try to negotiate this conflict and how people see him on DS9.
Well, he's a trained spy, which also means using comedy to save your own neck at times, if need be.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
And other moments too. I don't know. I said I'm trying to madly catch up in the chat here.
Well, speaking of the chat, Scott says the root beer scene was supposed to be straight comedy, and the actors decided to try it, and how it was, and the writers loved it. It's an amazing scene. But speaking of the chat, Larry, a lot of Voyager examples. Oh my goodness. So many.
Really? Well, Voyager again was one where I went, I'm just going to think of the characters because there are so many moments you could chase down and what the image do. So and on Voyager, there's the obvious one and the one that is a slyer choice. So
couple quick ones before we get to Voyager. I just noticed them in the comments section, and these are great examples just to bring up. So Victoria says our man Bashir uses humor to increase the conflict, which leads to the end of the conflict. That's a great example. Scott just mentioning the funny moment of Kira throwing a baseball, and that cracks him up. And Christoph says bada bing bada bang. That episode and the seconds they HD'd for what we left behind. Yeah. There was another someone mentioned Damar. I don't know if they mentioned his Kanar, but let me see if I can find this.
Oh, go ahead.
Victoria says, I wanted to point out all the funny Damar lines, but his humor tended to increase conflict rather than decrease it. But it's still in keeping with our theme, humor and conflict.
Say lessening conflict.
Yeah.
Well, there's two DS9, and one of them's a Quark line, but they're both of the trope of, and they're not really in this, but people are breaking this anyway. But one is... they actually have, this is more like this is more of a K3. The writers actually letting Quark say, war. What is it good for?
Right.
Absolutely nothing. The song lyric. But the other is in the cards where they're chasing the Dr. Geiger and his sensory surround, canceling machine. I keep forgetting. Anyway, they actually get Jake and Nog actually get to do a takeoff on Liars and Geiger, and they do Lions and Tigers and Bears. Oh my, from Wizard of Oz. as dialogue, which has nothing to do with our theme today. But
No, but
that's just Ira Bear's twisted sense of humor. That is.
One more from DS9 before we move on.
Ain't nobody watching the
I just
show.
love all the DS9 comments that are coming in. We have the best community here. The lifers are amazing. Melanie says, when Bashir tells him the story about the boy who cried wolf, and Garrick says, rather gruesome for children, don't you think? And Bashir explains the morale is, or the moral of the story is not to lie. And Garrick says, no, it's to not tell the same lie twice. But I mean, the conflict there. That's like different cultures coming into contact,
We're
right?
gonna have culture clash conflict, and we've got again the door's wide open.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
trying to make this manageable, and we keep blowing it open. But okay,
well, there is when it comes to stories and parables, we bring all of our cultural learnings, our biases into how we understand those stories. And it makes complete sense that a Cardassian, given their culture, especially a Cardassian who was trained as a spy and worked as a spy, he would see the moral of the story is to not tell the same lie twice. And Bashir's sort of like, what are you talking about? So that's a conflict there. That's an
I mean, you know, and
intercultural
Bashir's
conflict.
genetically engineered. He should see beyond. Oh yes, I see. Of course.
He's still playing it cool at that point, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So speaking of Voyager, so many great episodes here. Victoria mentioned Bride of Chaotica. There is conflict there. I would say in the second one, right, where the characters are sort of they've lost control of the
There were like
holodeck.
little scenes that were used. There's only one full length episode where where Janeway is Queen Arachnia and all of that. And it's a them versus the holodeck. I mean, the holodeck's stuck and they're trying to get out of it. And yeah, and Picardo, the Doctor, is the president of Earth at one point.
Absolutely. So Charlotte says here, Tuvok and Neelix, anything involving the Doctor,
Yes.
they won't any tension. The tension between Tom and B'Elanna till they finally get together. There are some critical dynamics here between the characters that keep playing out, and one of the conflictual relationships there is Tuvok and Neelix. That happens throughout the
Right.
show.
Well,
Yeah.
I was going to say Neelix was the comedy relief of the show, and a lot of, but even and God, poor Ethan, poor Johnny, he was always trying to do something with it. They weren't always giving him decent stuff, but the times when it was a Neelix show and they let him go, and I almost pulled an image from this, and I'd kind of forgotten it. The episode Rise, stuck on an orbital tethered elevator with you. Clowns to the left of me, jokers to the right. Here I am, stuck in an orbital tether elevator with you. But I didn't sing it though, so I guess it's not a drinking line. But Neelix overall, but in that episode where they're trying to make, they use humor as a conflict to disarm. It's like you've got it with the people, the regulars and the irregulars amongst themselves have conflict. But Neelix was also kind of their ambassador-ish because he supposedly knew at least a chunk of the Delta Quadrant they were traveling through. And in the role of an ambassador or, formal diplomatic relations or whatever you call whatever Voyager was doing in the Delta Quadrant, using conflict using humor as a conflict de-stressor with strangers even. Of course, sometimes the strangers come from cultures that don't know what humor is or they're very dour, that mistrust humor. But anyway, Neelix was a prime character that would use humor all the time. And the sad thing was a lot of it was unintentional. Of course, that was what the scene would be about. Oh, and hopefully it was done well, written well. Oops, there's my Voyager coming through. Okay. But yeah, and then we go with the Doctor too as a humorous character. But the Doctor's, a lot of his were unintentional.
Yes.
The Doctor didn't intentionally use comedy.
Yeah.
He was more like the butt of the joke because he was, whatever.
Yeah, I don't think he was trying to be funny. He was often funny, but he wasn't using it intentional.
Yeah, but the case I came up with, and again, I think I finally pulled one from the very beginning, and it was just a moment, but it showed this whole thing about the kid that uses comedy to diffuse tension, that doesn't get his due, and we just mentioned it here in an interpersonal way, but he actually across the board is Tom Paris, but his humor is sarcasm, which we
Yes.
didn't get much of.
No,
Well,
we haven't really talked much
maybe
about
Scott Derrickson was
sarcasm.
sarcastic too, and Quark. I mean, that was part of their appeal.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Tom could turn on the dry, oh, real, like, and I was watching the pilot, and that's why I pulled the image from. When he first walks in, he's already waiting to be damned by everybody, beyond Harry Kim, who doesn't know, who's so green he doesn't know. And when he walks in sick bay, and he doesn't know the doctor, and he doesn't know the doctor remembers him from his Crisis Planet, but his origin story Crisis Planet, Caldic Prime. But he walks in, and the first little vibe he gets from the doctor, who never got a name unless it's in the books. At least the first officer got a name that died, but the doctor. And he walks in and he says something about yes, and I'm getting a little. I was just watching it last night. I'm getting a little whatever right now, and he's saying I'm getting the brush off. I'm getting the cold shoulder.
Mm.
But he's being sarcastic, and he's kind of like, oh, look, I'm being bright and witty, but I'm in with the knife here. But it's his way of diffusing the tension between them, and maybe, I know exactly what's going on. Don't try to hide it from me. Let's just cut to the chase and get to the heart of it. And he's being kind of deadly sarcastic about it. And that's a defense mechanism that people have, but to me, it fits the spectrum, I think.
Yeah, Glenn's got a great statement here. Sarcasm, the gap in understanding between a person being sarcastic and members of the intended audience who fail to understand.
Understand.
And
Yeah.
I think that's I'm glad you brought up Tom Paris here. This moment is one of a meme I often use when he's ordering some
Oh,
soup.
yeah.
And there's a lot of funny moments with Tom, but when it does come to sarcasm, it can often be misunderstood. It can often come across as mean-spirited. It doesn't translate super well across cultures. One of my favorite shows growing up, my dad and I used to love watching Mr. Bean, the great British comedy with Rowan
Noel
Atkinson. What's that?
I said his name. Yeah.
Yeah,
Noel
yeah,
Atkinson.
yeah.
I was amazed that I remembered his name. Yeah.
What's great about it is the main character never speaks, and the comedy is all physical. The comedy is all situational, and it often does translate well across many cultures. And sarcasm, I feel like, is the opposite end of that. We've got like the Three Stooges and like physical comedy, and like or even going further back, we've got the great silent.
Oh yeah, Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin.
Charlie,
and
yeah, exactly.
Harold Lloyd and all of them. Yeah.
Yeah, and so we have that end on one spectrum, and then on the other end, I think is on the far end of that is sarcasm, which is all verbal, very situational, very specific to that cultural moment, that context, and it can be very hard to translate. And Tom Paris does do a lot of that. I think that's one of the reasons why he can be a bit. As Patrick Stewart would say, divisive of a character, and some really great other moments here. Glinda said, "I'm thinking of the Doctor in Seven's body."
Yes.
That's
yes.
another moment that he's not trying to be funny, but Jerry Ryan is actually hilarious in that.
Oh,
that
she's
episode.
amazing. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a lot of conflict that comes across as humorous, but it's not necessarily.
It's conflict. I mean, it's a dramatic situation. They're infiltrating an alien crew there. I mean, she's trying to portray. There's tension. It's just coming out. That's a case where it's kind of like the Battlefield Gallows humor here. She's the pressure with him and her body in service of the mission, which is a conflict. They're trying to get. It's not a conflict, but they're trying to get something, and they're using subterfuge. They're not being straight ahead with it.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. it's a great moment there. Oh yeah, and people are saying Monty Python is another example of that. Monty Python is, I think, there's
Wait,
of the spectrum of like of
I missed
physical.
the Monty Python Trek episode. Hold on. I'm totally got
They,
me.
you know who should do that? I would love to see Discovery do like a Monty Python kind of thing, but Monty Python I think is kind of in the middle where there's a lot of physical humor, but there's a lot of
This
cultural
is an
humor.
X triple. Actually, that was my point. Years ahead of his time.
Oh
Oh,
man, oh man. Well, kind of skipping forward in the timeline a little bit. Giorgio is a wonderful example of a character that uses a
yeah.
lot of humor in conflict.
Well,
Um,
it's like the Tom Paris approach a little bit. It's kind of like the dry, deadly, dry, sarcastic. Even deadlier than Tom's. And
yeah,
she's wearing
yeah,
black.
yeah.
The Terran Empire. Yeah.
Even Prime Universe Giorgio, I think has a few moments of use of humor. In that very first scene, I think there's just a little bit of
Hmm.
humor too that Prime Universe Giorgio has, but definitely with the Mirror Universe Empress Giorgio, we see a lot of that.
Well, her put downs, it's conflict. It's not so much about resolving the conflict. It's just saying like I'm not stepping down. I'm not intimidated by you. That kind of conflict.
Yeah, and using humor as a in some of the same ways as Kirk does in the original series of misdirection and of keeping people a little bit off their game, using humor as a tactic.
Hmm.
There's that oh what's her line where Stamets says, "You know I'm gay, right?" And then her response is like, "What does she say? You think in such binary terms,
Yeah, yeah.
or something like that?" Yeah,
That's exactly it. Yeah.
it's such a it's that where she's using humor to kind of keep the character off their balance and to rethink things. And it's definitely humor being used as a tactic, which is really quite lovely because we haven't seen too much of that from Terrans in the Mirror Universe. We definitely see that with the Intendant in DS9 and
Hmm.
in the Mirror Universe. She uses Nanaz is hilarious as the Intendant, um, but the Terrans aren't really that funny. Especially as
Oh,
I love.
it's the
Uh,
Terran universe. Yeah.
well, I love the Terrans in Enterprise. In A
Hmm.
Mirror Darkly, is it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, the two-parter, but they're not very funny, and they're not that funny in Mirror Mirror
They're
either.
deadly right. Yeah, they're so on the nose with everything. Now that I think about it. Yes.
Right. So Giorgio is sort of the first funny Terran
Well,
we really see.
what do you do with a standout person like that? You give them their own show.
You do,
So
or do you? Hopefully that show's gonna happen. I'd love to see
yeah,
Giorgio lead that show.
I hope she's got some good exit clauses in her contract. Like you promised me a series. I was
Yeah.
the original spinoff.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Let's.
we dived into Discovery, and that's cool. But
Oh,
I'm curious. I know there's some obvious answers, but I was struggling a little bit to find one of those anything from Enterprise. And I know if I really sat and thought, we would. And Phlox is got to be and Trip, has his sarcasm.
oh, I know. I got one for you, Larry. Do you have one, or do you?
No, go ahead. I was very tired by then.
Oh. Okay, I need a moment to get the image.
If I just wanted to go find a specific moment.
I need a moment while I pull this image.
Like I said, between Trip and Phlox, I knew we would have, and maybe even Archer would blunder in and be funny for a moment.
Archer blunder in. That is kind of the right.
Shran would be another one,
Well, you just ruined my surprise. I was trying to find the image.
Well, excuse me, pink skin.
I was trying to find the moment of the view screen reveal of Shran in The Expanse, I believe, when They get there's hailing frequencies, and we don't know who's on the other end. And then Archer puts it on screen, and you just see the antenna. Do you know the moment I'm talking about, Larry?
So how is camera angle being used to diffuse conflict?
Well, I was just gonna say, it's not so much the camera angle as it is the way Shran, what he says and how he says to diffuse tension. And Shran, just as a character, is someone who, like Garrick, I think I see a lot of similarity here between almost as if they've met, maybe as another character, maybe a Vorta. They've had some interactions. But the great Jeffrey Combs here, how he plays Shran is someone who, like Garrick and like Kirk, use specific lines to keep people off their game, keep them off balance.
It's a strategic move. Yeah, it's a tool. Yeah.
Yeah. Shran is highly effective at doing that, and it's between the Vulcans, the humans, and the Andorians. The Andorians do play this critical, while the humans are sort of like, hey, let's work together, and the Vulcans are like, we're not working with the Andorians. The Andorians sort of play this role of keeping everyone off their balance. And it is, our other founding members of the Federation, they kind of do some stuff there. But the Andorians do play this critical role of keeping things.
Maybe we'd find out what the Tellarites are capable of in depth if they ever got a chance to be a regular on a series.
I'm right here with you, Larry. Like
I'm sure there's probably an actor, maybe even a writer, who could do justice that Ira and Armin did for the Ferengi to revitalize them.
Yes. Yeah.
And maybe even the runner-up to that character could be that character's running foil.
Christoph says 2 days and 2 nights, as well as Carbon Creek. Carbon Creek is actually, and Christoph, I love your typo here, Carbon Greek. And I know we've got a typo in the show title. Larry, I accidentally put it as Life Support Lie. As in our title.
Oh, okay.
So, and Christoph discovered it, the typo there. So, Christoph, I think this is just, it's just things coming full circle with your Carbon Creek typo. That's lovely. But Carbon Creek is a great episode where the Vulcans are not necessarily trying to be funny here in this earlier first contact with humans. But a lot of those moments come across as funny because, again, the fish out of water thing that we keep talking about here.
And you have humans versus Vulcans, and also 22nd versus. Well, it's the same century. Anyway.
Yeah. We've got one more great example to talk about, and people, this is one that is really campy, and it comes from Star Trek Picard. And it's this moment.
That's the one I could. Yeah, the whole thing of seeing all of them in those outlandishly stupid, ridiculous, Rios in the orange pimp outfit and all of that stuff. But it's like I'll see your ridiculous costumes and raise you with Sir Patrick using a ridiculous accent. Almost like he's channeling a Holy Grail there. Yeah,
it's pretty out there. I really must say.
For about 2 seconds.
Yeah, it's definitely a moment, and it's so
because a lot of Picard is unrelentingly grim, except for the little it's Hugh before he dies seeing Picard, and it's the reunion on Nepenthe, and there's maybe one other time, and other than that it's just relentlessly, deadly dramatic.
Yeah, no, it's I honestly didn't find that scene that funny because it did seem out of tone.
It's about 8 seconds long. But
yeah. But I should probably revisit it. I should take my own advice, and I should revisit that moment. Larry, can I? This is for Jared here, and his drinking game. Can we stretch ourselves and find a moment from the Kelvin timeline?
You're gonna make me think.
I am gonna make you think. This is a thinking show here.
So it's a thinking show and not a plexing show.
Uh, there must be a moment here of
Well, I know that the lifers will come up with one. So
I gotta believe there's a moment here between Kirk and Spock, especially from the 2009 film. There's a lot
or
of
McCoy, yeah, or Scotty,
or McCoy or Scotty. I like this ship. It's exciting,
Scotty, especially.
There you go, Scotty. Scotty's the one where he's beamed aboard the ship. He's like, "What's going on here?" There's
Jimmy
that massive
vampires and zombies. So yeah.
Larry, it's this moment where he walks on the ship. Kirk and Spock have just sort of had it with each other, and Scotty says, "I like this ship. It's exciting."
Yeah.
It is one of those moments where he's trying to really bring down the tension, and it definitely feels like one of those moments where you need a laugh.
Strategic move, or is he just reacting?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think that's a little bit of who he is, but it's I think it works on two levels. I think from an audience perspective and how it works in the script is we need a little bit of a laugh there because
right, yes,
yeah.
But I'm organically as a character, is it?
But I think organically as a character, he's probably one of those people that feels really uncomfortable with that level of tension. And he's like, I gotta bring this down. This is intense. And
he's just had 47 years with Keenzer alone in that.
Right.
He hasn't been around people in a long, multitudes of people.
Gosh, I was drinking some water, Larry, and I just spilled it. I just spilled it over my pants. That's exciting. This is quality episode we got. We're putting up
mine. Yeah, quality multi-streaming. Okay. Scintillating.
Oh my gosh. I think we've sufficiently covered the timeline here, Larry.
I have no time
to talk about time.
Yeah.
Let's go to the counselor's log, Larry. This is the part of the show where I do a little bit of a deeper dive.
Can I just say that,
please,
to honor our giveaway, the whole damn series is using humor and conflict.
Yeah, we can't.
Seconds, you can't.
It's all of Lower Decks. It's all of Lower Decks,
and I know that's also broad brushing. And the longer the series went along, the more the humor was organically and the wackiness was organic part of the plot. Where by the last 2 or 3 episodes, you were like, "Oh my God, I'm really caring about these people, and I don't care that they're laughing. It's manic." Even having said that, the whole series is this theme today. So okay,
100%, 100%. So the counselor's log, this is the part of the show where I do a little bit deeper dive into the psychology behind what we're talking about. And I'm going to make it quick because I want to get to the K3 and we've got I've got a fun little away mission for all of you.
And we have this to do too.
And we got this to do, yeah. So for a long time, people have wondered, why the heck do we laugh? What is the reason behind it? And it hasn't seriously been studied from a scientific perspective until kind of a little recently. And what we think the reason why we have humor is actually for a social purpose. So, Larry, you think about a situation where someone slips on, let's say, a banana peel, they fall down, and they get up, and it's really funny. Why? Why is that funny? Well, humor seems to exist to help people bring down the tension when a social expectation has not been met, when things have gone awry, when something unexpected and when something breaks social expectations, like someone falling down, your immediate thing is concern. Oh my gosh, are you okay? And when the person gets up and kind of laughs about it, it communicates to everyone else, hey, don't worry, this social expectation has been broken and we're fine. So humor does seem to have this function of breaking tension. That's the leading theory here is it does exist to bring down some of this social conflict and social expectations that have gone awry. That's probably why we have it, is to communicate to everyone around, hey, this is okay. And this kind of gets to stand-up comedy, is especially when stand-up comedy goes into uncomfortable sort of reflections on society, we laugh as a way of communicating to everyone else that, hey, it's okay that we're talking about this in this context. Um, the other thing that humor. Oh, go ahead, Larry.
Or
Oh,
sneeze.
bless you.
Okay.
Sneezing can be funny.
Okay.
Sometimes when people can't. I remember I had a colleague
There's a
who.
break in the drama of your counselor's log. But go ahead.
That's okay. Hey, that's what we're here for. The other thing that we talk about with humor, and not only does it communicate that, hey, it's okay for what just happened or what we're talking about, but the other thing that humor does, it speaks to this theory called the broaden and build theory of emotions. And for a long time, people have wondered, well, what's the whole role of more positive emotions? We know negative emotions largely keep us safe. Things like fear protects us from danger. Anger helps us to correct wrongs that have occurred. But why do we experience joy and humor? Like, what's the reason for that? What do these emotions actually do for us? Not only does humor communicate that it's okay, but humor also does this broaden and build thing where it undoes the effects of negative emotions. Negative emotions tend to restrict our thinking to very specific things, to the thing we're scared of, the thing we're angry about. Positive emotions like joy and laughter, they expand our thinking. They actually make us think more broadly, and they undo the physical effects of those negative emotions. Negative emotions tend to trigger flight and fight or flight, the sympathetic nervous system. Laughter tends to trigger the parasympathetic nervous system. It literally undoes the effects of anxiety and anger. So, Larry, this is one of those things where I was getting back to when I worked in the psych ER. High stress, high anxiety, high stakes, and there was almost a need of us finding humor in everyday moments to help us bring down the intensity of those emotions.
It was
to
a
cope with
survival
it.
tactic for you
Yes.
guys. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's why we got humor, to make it okay to talk about difficult things, and also to kind of broaden our thinking and undo the effects of some of these negative emotions.
Well, if you look at that, look at the entire professional range of comedy and comedians. Let's just take it for stand-up comedians. There's a spectrum, and there's all kinds of different humor, but I would say the range of humor is matching what that does, which
Mm,
is protect us from the simplest, most innocuous of comedy is just like, hey, you've had a long day,
yeah.
so now
Yeah.
you're gonna here's a relaxer for you, all the way to the satirists and the savage comedians and the late night comics who are trying to, if you're feeling the real world is driving you crazy with the insanity, the real world insanity, and I'm using the word lightly here, the lack of cohesion, the illogic that you see in the life around you, and you're trying to cope with that. Well, here comes a comedian, a cutting political humorist, a satirist who's going to, or a sketch comedy writer who's going to help you cope with what you see as the frustration of life. And if you look at that, what stand-up comedy is very selfish, but it's like survival selfish. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I
Yeah. Totally.
thought of
No.
it that way, but if the audience and it's the entire, it's not just the family safe comedians. They're doing that only on a very basic level, like, oh, put your feet up, sit down after dinner or whatever, and try to relax from your busy day.
A, a couple
Also,
of
like people trying to save the world.
Just a
you
couple
know
of comments from Charlotte that really emphasize this. Charlotte says, so maybe laughter also serves as indication that the physical danger has passed. Absolutely. That gets to that idea of communicating it's okay. And then Charlotte also has this great little story. The first time I passed out after giving blood, I woke up to three phlebotomists taking care of me. Once I gathered my senses a bit and I started laughing, and they were like, "Oh, good, she's fine now." And it's that way of communicating that, yeah, like things are okay, things are fine. And Nathaniel says one of the particular uses of humor, particularly in Yiddish theater, is to overcome anxieties of being perceived as outsiders. And this is one of the things that humor can be a great way to talk about very difficult things. So yeah, that's what I got, Larry. Let's jump into the K3 factor.
Oh, the K3. Okay, so here's a backstage Star Trek angle. Again, K3, the only mention of mental health in the original series there, of the very left-hand monitor on McCoy's biobed. And this will be fairly short and brief. I know I've talked about this person before, but here's a concrete example. And again, trying to get to humor used for conflict. And in my case, I'm thinking all the backstage behind-the-scenes uses, which happens all the time. What you're just saying, people on a TV production or a movie production, they're under all kinds of insane time deadlines, or maybe they're having to do time deadlines against a budget, or they're having to do budget against the time. They're trying to deliver a stupid project to deliver. In the original series, it was get it to the network airing, or whatever. The motion picture was trying to make that stupid December 7th. Discovery was like, can we ever get this damn thing started and launched with a coherent team? I mean, whatever. Wrath of Khan or any of these things. Can we recreate a new Star Trek in a different way, but still be the same? So all those pressures yield to that same kind of, in the trenches, we're all getting through this together. And you talk to the people from different series now, like you talk to the art department, you talk to some of the directors who worked on stage and the assistant crew, the writers and the assistants and the heart building or whatever, or those clumps of people in their own way have that kind of shared time. And that's why reunions, I just thought of this, soldiers reunions, the Star Trek reunions of the crew and cast are with themselves. That's why the actors love getting together. It's as much conventions when you have more than one of them. Conventions, when they go to dinner after that reunion of getting together, is as much fun for them as it is for the fans seeing them on stage.
Yeah.
So in a very real world. But here's a case where, in the moment, again, to conflict, I think of somebody with a Tom Paris kind of sense of humor, is a guy who did so much work and contributed so much to Star Trek and did not get a lot of credit for it until years went by. But that first slide, these are all black and whites, but the first slide kind of is a little reveal there. It's a Polaroid he sent to a fan, and thank God the fan saved it. But we've got this spectacle of young Bob Justman in the 60s, when he had time to burn, energy to burn, posing with the Gorn in costume there. a Gorn suit and costume. But Bob Justman, his like...
Is that a Gorn, Larry? That's not a Gorn.
I mean, Salt Vampire. Sorry, yes. Salt Vampire. The Gorn was also sitting up in the office somewhere. But this is a guy who his title was like associate producer, which is insane because on the production side he was number 2 to Gene. He was like the producer, and but he only had the title of, it's so 60s. I think of associate producer, I think of Mary Richards in the pilot of what she got hired for, of her show, on her news show on Mary Tyler Moore. It's like, that's like the lowest entry level producer thing, and that's not what he was doing. And one sign of that is in their little tiny, before there were 20 producers on a show, and 10 of them were writing producers. The original series had Gene, and then some hired writer person, and at times a second person. Like there was John D.F. Black and Dorothy Fontana, or Gene Kuhn and Dorothy Fontana, or Stephen Karabatsis, and then the third season. Anyway, there was like a head writer-ish person in some combination of roles, and maybe a second, and that's it. And the rest was all freelance, and they had to write and rewrite that. And in doing that, but here's Bob Justman, who's the producer, but from day one talked about scripts too. And he would talk about the producibility of them. Like, we have to cut these scenes, it's too expensive. So what I sent you here is, I got to find the big window now. So look at the first one. These are Bob Justman's, after they'd been at it for months and months and months, draft after draft. Harlan Ellison's sitting on the edge of forever. Oh, is that sharp enough to read? Oh no, it looks like it's fuzzy. I don't know. Can anybody? Oh, I guess so. I'm blowing it up big. If you if you look at, I mean, he goes through here talking about, he doesn't just talk about how expensive something is or can we cut this. He also talks about lines and dialogue. And if you, it's cutting it to the right. If you look at the 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth paragraph, he just says, "Scene 45 hurts me no end."
Oh.
He just has his comments in his notes. And if you think about it, notes to anybody, an actor or a writer, it's a source. I mean, hopefully everybody's being professional and no one's getting personal. But sometimes people, we can't help but have if we're getting critiqued, even if we're, we know that it needs that or we're contractually obligated to do it, it still doesn't help, right? And so there's a source of tension and conflict. And some of Bob Justman's notes, even though he's writing these to Gene and they're not going like right to Harlan, it's like about rewriting. Oh, no, you have to. So there's that. I was trying to read the page. I finally got the page where I could read it. You got to get it big, but you have to do the other. The other pages, these are out of order.
Oh, the other page? You want me to put up the.
Yeah, so the other page is the one this is just examples of Bob Justman's dry humor. And he's writing this. It's not to Harlan, but these were going to have to be things they were going to do.
Another page, Larry.
No, you have to have the other page.
Okay, let me see if I can.
Oh no!
Let me see. You keep talking.
Well, I just wanted it to be on the page before I said it out loud. Anyway, there's a famous. I think Bob Justman's most famous critique is in this. It's like in the other page. It's like that when he just says.
Oh! Hold on! Give me a second. It's coming, folks. You're gonna be excited. Because I got this. I got the other page.
I worry about our PC culture putting up with it.
There we go.
I'm trying to find it now. After all this, did I send you the wrong page?
Do you want me to read any part of it?
Hold on a minute. Well, this one at the bottom, he says, "Do you think that Kirk's third speech on page 37 is cute enough?" No, I didn't send you the right page after all that. Anyway, he has one.
No, he does say, "Do you think Kirk's third speech on page 37 is cute enough?" It's right there. It's a second to last paragraph.
That's my fallback, because what I really wanted to show you was the page in this same set on City where he says like, "Scene 47 on page 12 made me want to go home and hurt my wife and children."
Oh, gosh. That's not good.
But my point here is he's using a very, gallows kind of black humor there. At times I know what it was. Go back and there's one that has the really long paragraph on top.
Okay. Let me find it.
Sometimes he would also make his point by like bludgeoning you.
Here is the.
Okay. So they're talking about shooting outdoors, even on location, versus on a set. And he says that long one, the description beginning on the top of scene 62 would take us one full night and onto another one. Therefore, we'd be coming back the next night to do the rest. The rest of the sequence should take another full night. Just look at the beginning of scene 62 and all the descriptions therein and estimate to yourself how many extras you would need and how many you would have to hire to take care of the business that he wants, and how many people you would have to hire, and how many people to wardrobe, and how many people to have made up, and how many people to alter to fit the wardrobe, and how many to care, and and how many musicians and uniforms and period cars and period trucks and set dressing and and dressing the windows and the lunches and the suppers and the overtime and the golden time and the rainbow time and on and on and on, and you would find that your brain would absolutely be boggled by the enormity of it all. Anyway, I'm just saying there's a range here that this is not what people do today. I guess maybe like what's his name saves it for his title cards at the end of Big Bang Theory, and 2.5 Men and all of his shows. He puts all that energy into the title card at the end of the show. Bob Justman's energy all went into his memos on the original series when he had energy to burn. But that's a case, to me, a prime case and it happened other times too. People had to inject humor to lessen the tension of getting the damn show done on time. And that's my point here, is there's a rich history of that going back to Bob Justman's infamous memos. And you can see a circular thing where they would write, they're all preserved. a lot of them are preserved in Making of Star Trek, where Dorothy and Bob Justman and Gene and Herb Solo are writing sanity memos to each other on silly topics, just to keep themselves sane, I think, in the moment.
And we got one more image, Larry.
And this is I was lucky enough to know Bob. He helped me save my ass on the first edition of the companion that I had to do 3 months. And actually, we did like a 4-hour interview, and we didn't talk about the original series, which was just the first year of Next Generation. And he shared a lot of his memos then. And it was I had the chance to get him on. I helped get him on stage when Creation still had the Pasadena Grand Slams before Vegas. And or they were overlapping at the end. Anyway, and get him, but it was like trying to get him out in front of fans to hear him talk live before he passed. And he passed probably about, not that picture, that was from 92, but he passed in the mid-aughts. But we got him back on stage, and once in Vegas. Anyway, that, those original voices and the range of humor displayed by people, and some people, of course, in Star Trek, were not very humorous. Some people burned up to a frazzle, I think, because they didn't have a sense of humor to draw on. Given the tension that TV production, you take any production on a deadline and a budget like that, TV especially, but movies also, and then you put it under the Star Trek spotlight like few shows have to put up with. The expectation game and all that. Now you've got the Marvel and the DC universes and Star Wars and Doctor Who. I mean, you take those high-profile franchises and maybe even some non-genre ones too, and that just adds the tension of creators behind the scenes. So there's a lot of high-stakes stuff going on, and then you have the scandals that are polluting those hopefully not too toxic environments, and that adds stress to people too. So they're even the good people are dealing with that on top of everything they have to deal with. So yeah, good on that. Anyway,
I've got a away mission for folks, and then Larry, let's do the giveaway. After the away mission. The away mission I have for you comes from a real life thing that I did when I was practicing full time in New York. I did a lot of social anxiety group therapy experiences, and these were 12-week long groups where people with social anxiety were coming together, and we were kind of working through those issues using exposure therapy all together. And my favorite week of that group therapy experience is when we brought in improv as a tool to help people. And this is a rare time where I too have a document to share. I know, it's very rare. I usually don't do this, but this is the handout that I would give, and this actually came.
Only bring documents to shows that start 20 minutes late. Is
that that might be true. This is a handout that was actually created by a psychologist who worked with Second City in Chicago, the very famous improv group over there. And he went through training with Second City, and then he started to apply these lessons into his group therapy. And we had a conversation, brought this over to the work that I do in our clinic. And it's just a wonderful set of rules. And this is how he has applied the rules of improv to group therapy. And the reason I'm bringing this up is I think these are great life lessons that we can use to help us apply humor to our life to deal with the conflict that comes up in our everyday moments. So I'm going to put it up here. Hopefully people can read it, and you can read it on your own, but I'm just going to kind of summarize some of the details here. The famous rule of yes and. This is in improv where I might say, we might be playing an advertising game, like where I might say, like, everyone, water, one of the greatest things that you can purchase. And then the other person would say, yes, and water is wet. And the other person can respond, yes, and wet water is the best because no one wants to have dry water. So yes, and is this idea of building upon what the other person is saying, and you're not denying the other person. And the way we applied this in social anxiety treatment is when you're having these kind of hilarious, like here. It just reminds me of like The Price is Right or something. I don't know. I don't know what that is.
I was trying to Brady Bunch it myself.
Yeah. But yes and is a great tool to use in conversations with other people. And this idea of just building upon what the other person is saying. The other thing, I think something you and I do a lot is act, react. And what it says over here is if yes and is about attitude and acceptance, this rule is about taking responsibility and confronting fear. The core belief here is that everyone on stage should always work to contribute to the scene. You do this by being courageous and following your instincts. Put something out there and trust that your fellow actors will follow your lead. Take the risk, don't hold back, make bold choices. We do this all the time. We say something silly and strange and the other person reacts to it, and like suddenly we have this thing where you and I sing songs for some strange reason on Life Support Live. You know, the idea of Larry, did you freeze? Are you still there? Hello, Larry. Did I lose Larry? Larry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I just fall down on my act react ratio?
Oh, see, that's what happens.
Uh-huh. Yeah, you were really starting to flounder there without my reaction.
You looked literally frozen. And that's what would happen if you don't have act react. But the biggest one, I think, for us...
my master's in theater again. Okay.
The biggest one, I think, for all of us here related to this topic is this third one. Be truthful, not funny. Let me read this one out loud. One of the biggest mistakes new improvisers make is to try to be clever and witty. It often feels forced. Instead of going for the laugh, students are taught to be vulnerable, to stay in character, and to be honest. Veteran improvisers call this approach truth in comedy. And Larry, this is where I think some of the funniest moments really come from, is when we're being honest, when we're being vulnerable, when we're saying what's on our mind. That's where real humor comes from. It's not in trying to be clever, but it's
good writing advice as well.
It's always good writing advice, and it's hard. It's harder to be honest than it is to be clever. But in these moments, especially when we're dealing with all the chaos and all the ups and downs of life in pandemic world, being truthful about our experiences as opposed to trying to be funny, that's where the humor actually ends up coming out. And the last thing I want to say, which I think is always great advice for humor, is there's no mistakes. Improv helps remove the fear of making mistakes. You say clown and I hear gown, and you can't stop the scene to explain to each other what you really meant. This rule celebrates the fact that some of life's greatest discoveries are accidents born out of mistakes. Like Life Support Live.
Very true, Madam Curie. Okay.
So, folks, I hope there's a little something there that can...
Life Support Live, yes.
I hope there's something there that can kind of help you bring a little bit more humor to your life. Larry,
so behind.
Let's open up those hailing frequencies, and let's start that with a little giveaway here.
Let's hail, yeah. I keep saying I'm going to do this on a pad, put an app on a pad so I can, like, show people. So I'm going to fake it. Oh, look, I'm going to fake it on this pad. Okay. Anyway, so if you, everybody who, I set a 9 o'clock deadline an hour before showtime. So I could have said like 9:20. Anyway, there's probably 40, 50 names in here. And again, this is if you, actually more than that. If you put in for my Tuesday drawing, you're in here. And a lot of people came in fresh just now. So, there you go, Christina. Okay, so I'm going to do the old I'm not counting down in Klingon here. So I'm going to hit the green button. And I have a thing. They didn't have to be present because I know times are crazy and I don't want to do that. Although I wanted as many new folks. If you're here new, just because of the drawing with us today, please sound. If you're just lurking to see who wins, please sound off in the chat, okay, and say hi to everybody. I hope you've enjoyed today's show, by the way. If you're hanging on for the thing that you didn't have to be present to see who won. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Hit the green button. Click. And all these names. It's almost Mario Lira.
Mario.
I know it's It's a name that is not in my Tuesday group. So I'm gonna do a backup that I won't announce. So I'll have a legit backup to this in case. Okay.
Mario, are you here?
I don't think so, but
Do they
so
have to be here too, Larry?
No, they don't have to be present. I said they didn't have to be present, but he wasn't on Tuesday either. But it's like one of the first names I got in. So I want to make sure also that this is for U.S. addresses only, guys. I don't say U.S. residents. If you have an American friend, CBS just has to have an American address too. Oh, wow. The number 2 person on Tuesday came up as the number 2 person, my backup person.
Are you
in case I had a
serious?
problem.
That's
It's very weird. It's very weird. Okay. Sorry, I don't think our person was in our group today, but yay. Anyway, seriously though, if you're here waiting to see who won and you're not usually you haven't been with us on Life Support Live, I'd love for you to pop up in the chat.
Well, yeah, I want to give a shout out to Pewee, who was on my office hours this last Thursday, and we had a great conversation, and is also here now on YouTube. Good to see you here, Pewee. We've got some new folks here who've been chiming in. Alfredo is here for the first time. As a matter of fact, my first time here.
Really? Wow.
Yeah,
Because I've known Alfredo for ages. Alfredo's from Mexico City.
Very good to see you.
The leader or longtime leader, a leader in the Mexico City Star Trek Club.
Oh, awesome!
Yes.
Good to have you here. So we've had some new folks throughout this episode. The hailing frequencies are a little bit of a chance for us to kind of highlight some of the comments and have a little bit more open-ended conversation. Larry, I favorited some of the comments I wanted to get to that we haven't gotten to. Of course, Libby had a great comment about Ferengi. I just realized my absolute favorite humorous episode is Magnificent Ferengi. At last today again. Ask me tomorrow, and it'll be another episode. And Libby also makes me think of Little Green Men, which is humor and conflict, fish out of water, all of it coming together with Little Green Men.
Oh, I started to say I don't know if it's I keep because again I'm trying to think of intentional humor used as a tactic, not accidental humor. But yeah, Little Green Men is full of it. And I was trying to think it's totally accidental that Rom goes to. They're trying to scare since the reality of them being benign doesn't wash with the mentality of the 1947 American general and all the people there at the hospital base. They Rom and Quark and Nog come up. Okay, fine. We are invading aliens. And Nog goes over and points at the map, and here the invasion is going to happen. Bang, in Cleveland. I mean, it's like so tokenly, stand-up American schmaltz comedy. But it wasn't Nog intentionally doing it. It was just the joke is on us. It was like unintentional humor tool. It was Ryder. It was Ira and the team's tool to get at us. The conflict of I've got to get the audience laughing.
Speaking of getting the audience laughing, one of the greatest lines here, strangest, dumbest, funniest lines. Charlotte says, "Get the cheese to sick bay." Oh. The classic Voyager line. That's wonderful. I love that, and I also love there's coffee in that nebula. That's another one of my favorites.
I always thought that this was the line that they paid homage to the first episode of. I can't think of it exactly. Somebody's going to know it, but it hit me the minute I saw it. The end of the first episode of Lower Decks, when the zombies are out of control in the ship and they're having to get Boimler with his special sauce from the space cow, the spider cow, and she says, "Get the whatever to sick bay." I forget the word now. So I shouldn't have launched this unless I had the word. But to me, it always felt like an homage to Get the Cheese to Sick Bay.
Yeah, I see that. Earlier in our conversation around bullies, Glinda says, "I put a goose egg on my 5th grade bully's head, and they all gave me a wide berth after that. Lived up to the reputation until I was out of high school." Well done, Glinda. And Nathaniel says Mel Brooks is a great example of using humor about race to expose racism in Blazing Saddles. And that gets back to what we were talking about in the counselor's log about how humor can be used to talk about difficult things, to make it easier, to make it okay to talk about topics that we wouldn't otherwise use. It gets back to that idea of why we even experience humor. So thank you for that one, Nathaniel. Charlotte was relating things back to the stage throughout the
Yes,
show,
yes, yes, yes.
and said how conflict is often more humorous than no conflict, and also said, I remember an acting teacher pointing out that when you're playing comedy, your character doesn't find it funny. It's actually a very serious matter for them, and the
Right.
more they take it seriously, the funnier it is for the audience.
That's kind of the obverse of no villain ever thinks they're a villain.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
What
Totally.
they're
And
doing is it's their top, it's their just their goal, and they're gonna achieve. It's just what's at stake for them.
it makes me think of again that Picard meme that we were talking about a little bit earlier. This moment, I don't think Jean-Luc finds this very funny at all. Will Riker does in the back right there, but he's taking this. This is how he's going to negotiate the freedom of Luoxana and Deanna. So I think that's a great moment there. Cairo has this great line from DS9. Which of your stories were true? Garrick says, all of them. Even the lies? Garrick responds with a
Mhm.
smile, especially the lies.
It's the classic line. Now I'm looking at Linda here at 11:36 on the timer, and we were talking about Enterprise, and I did say Phlox and Trip would be my prime candidates for using humor to diffuse situations, because she said she's talking about Trip getting pregnant and unexpected is one, and him trying to deal with the uncomfortability and talk about a fish out of water. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and T'Pol has some dry one-liners, and yes,
Yeah, T'Pol actually does have a lot of one-liners now that I think about it.
in the Tuvok Spock tradition of being the dry, yeah,
Yeah,
kind of.
yeah, yeah. Absolutely. That is absolutely true, Linda. Um, Victoria said one of my favorite O'Brien moments is when he winks at Rom in Bar Association. Makes me laugh every time. That's a nice little subtle moment right there.
Little Irish union leader there, or union organizer in Rom, yeah.
Melanie says, how about when Riker served aboard the Klingon ship and he had a laugh with the Klingons? One told him, if Klingon fluid is too strong for you, we can have one of the females nurse you. And Riker is able to.
Excellent use of Klingon humor to diffuse a tense situation. Yeah.
Isn't it not like, don't the Klingons are actually quite funny, like besides Worf.
Their bluntness, yeah.
Yeah, Worf is. Doesn't Jadzia even say that to him at one point? You're the only Klingon that can't kind of like
Well,
cut loose.
Jadzia is I meant to say Jadzia at times has her dry wit shining through
Oh
to cut
yeah.
situations.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. The old man is quite hilarious.
Yes. Yes.
Um, Oh, and Charlotte also says on TOS, it always cracks me up how annoyed Kirk gets at things. It's both hilarious, but also I feel his pain being in a leadership position at my job, essentially herding cats.
The what? The what? The who? The who? The what? The what? Yes.
And Charlotte, your comments have been so wonderful throughout the show. I remember one time when I was a teenager having this huge fight with my mom. Then I said something that made her laugh, and we both laughed, and things started to settle down. That gets back to that broaden and build theory that I talked about in the counselor's log, and how positive emotions can literally undo negative emotions, and oftentimes diffuse tension that way. It's a great example, Charlotte.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm so behind on the chat, guys. I'm gonna apologize today. We've been kind of wrapped up here, but
Christoph said, I'd appreciate another Spaceballs type of movie, maybe as a next track, or maybe do we count Galaxy Quest as that? We didn't Galaxy. This is we should talk about Galaxy Quest just for a brief moment here what many consider to be the best Star Trek film. Um, it's in its humor, it is such a love letter to Star Trek, and celebrating not only Star Trek but also the fandom and the relationship between fandom and Star Trek. And there's a fine line there, isn't there? Here, I was about Larry. I was about to say there's a fine line there, isn't there, Harry? Um,
Well, I'm sure glad you didn't.
yeah, that would have been embarrassing, wouldn't
That
it?
would have been embarrassing.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Whew.
Um,
Good thing we're using some tension, some humor to diffuse the tension here.
yes, and speaking of humor,
Yes,
um,
and
yes, and that there's a fine line there between poking fun at and sort of like laughing at versus laughing with.
mm-hmm.
And Galaxy Quest, I think, sort of does walk that line well. Whereas there's moments where Trekkies One, the first documentary,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
feels like it's not necessarily laughing with.
Trekkies one was very well. I was there were went to see a rough cut screening of that, like a sample group, like an early
Hmm.
research group. Only it wasn't really scientific, but there were about 40 people, 50 people crammed in this little storefront empty building, right down from the studio on Melrose. When
Mm.
they were, and it was like, oh, Denise is doing this movie with these two guys, one of which was Roger Nygaard that I got to know really well later on, and showed me the idea of small scale documentary making. But we were all promised this thing that was going to show the good and the goofy, not the good and the bad, but the good and the goofy of the uplifting and the wacky parts of Star Trek. And after we screamed this rough cut, we were like, that was 98% crazy, wacky, and 2% uplifting.
Yeah, yeah.
We like a few seconds of Buzz Aldrin talking does not make 50% of them in the cut we saw, and they kept whittling on it. But it was, and if you notice, the second one not only was more international, but it was a lot more leavened with. I think they heard the feedback. We were just sitting there going. A lot of people were standing up and being enraged. This was people who were fans and people who worked in Trek like one step adjacent, like me. And I wasn't going to stand up and put on a show and be a token, screaming fan. There were lots of other people who were doing that, not screaming, but they were like, why did you, what? And I just wanted to say, I didn't see, where are the astronauts, scientists, engineers, doctors, politicians, ambassadors, sociologists, psychologists? Where are all the people who were inspired to do what they did because of Star Trek? Where's besides Buzz Aldrin, where are all these famous people that we could point to? Not just actors, and musicians, but all these other people. And I guess they got the message. But yeah, yes, absolutely, I'm with you 100%. By the time they did the final cut, it was. I don't think they wanted to go back and jigger with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, we did get Trekkies 2, which I think did a little bit of rebalancing.
A little.
Yeah. Alfredo says, have you touched on the humor of running jokes? Chekhov's Russia did it first. That was horrible. That was bad. Let's forget I even did that. And then Morn always
extremely little. Yes.
Morn always talking off camera, and
Yep.
Who Mourns for Morn is actually a hilarious episode. That's always a good one. Pee-wee says there's a quote, I can't remember who says it, but it's something like, if you're going to tell people the truth, it's best to make them laugh, which gets back at that idea of how humor can be effective in reducing tension. Well said there. And Nathaniel says, Armin says that he always played Quark as a hero of the story, which kind of speaks to what Charlotte said before about like what can, when you're playing these characters, play them very seriously, and the more seriously you play them, the more funny it can appear. Speaking of Armin, Charlotte asks, I wonder if that's why the Karingi Yes, the Karingi. I wonder if that's why the Friggi
The
are
far
also.
end of the Delta Quadrant. Yes.
Yeah, they're past the Kazon Ogla and the Kazon Nistrum is the Karingi. Their source. I wonder if that's why the Ferengi are a source of humor. Armin always speaks of the Ferengi as being the othered species in Star Trek, and maybe that's why, similar to Mel Brooks' use of humor to expose racism, the Ferengi are othered and are using humor to sort of expose some of the prejudice among the humans. I think that's well said. Charlotte said Ollie Chekhov is not the Scott on the show. I know that was bad. It was bad. I take it back. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh,
Can you say alien vessels now again?
alien vessel. No, I can't. My Russian is
It's
terrible.
a W, not a V.
Yeah, but I can't. Melanie says, the moment in First Contact when Alfred Woodard says, "You broke your little ships," that is breaking the tension of the conflict.
Yes,
Like
yes.
Picard is just, his trauma has been triggered. The trauma of being assimilated, of everything that happened with Locutus, all of this is coming back. He breaks all the models, all the enterprises, 1701 and bloody A, B, C, and D and E. They're all kind of broken
And
there.
stacked on top of his Borg Locutus trauma is the fact that he lost the D and he's
Yes.
not about to lose the E. Like
Yes.
that's
Oh,
like
yeah.
the icing on the cake that people overlook sometimes. Like
Yeah.
I'm not going to lose, and he lost the Stargazer.
Yeah, he did lose. Yeah. Absolutely.
Old loser Picard here is about to go down in history.
Yeah, and then Melanie also says, and talking about Ahab and his whale, and Lily points out, never read it. I feel like she is all of us when we read a headline to an article, we talk about it, but we actually haven't read the article.
Think about it for a second. Who has Lily been putting up with
Yeah,
for years?
Zephram Cochrane.
Zephram Cochrane and his binging, drinking binges and whatever. Although I think he may have gone off the deep end because of the Borg attack. Part of that may have been that. But I get the idea that no, that was part of his regular routine.
Well, and Melanie's got a follow up here, like playing that sequence out when they do decide to evacuate. And Picard says plenty more letters in the alphabet. When Beverly says we barely even knew the E. That's a lovely moment there too of Picard breaking some of that tension here.
Yeah, that's where Ensign Smith needed to say, and our audiences even less.
Larry, we could go on and on here, but I really would love to hear a little bit about this.
Oh, thank you. Just a real quick reminder, everybody, and I know we're all talking about where things are flying. Every passing week, I think we're constantly readjusting, and depending on where we live, how we are with the COVID and what we're doing. And I know the states feel like they're getting better and better about that, and that's almost sinful to talk about because of the situation around the world. And I should also do a shout out here to Adil, who played and I've gone blank on the character name, the
Starfleet,
the Starfleet agent, the protocol
the guard,
officer.
yes.
In the beginning and the premiere and the finale of Discovery's last season, who was all alone by himself for 40 years from a Starfleet family, keeping that outpost going after the burn, and Michael keeping his scanner going for no reason, barely. And Michael finds him, and at the end we see he got promoted. And he'd been all alone, but carrying out his duty for 40 years, and then got to rejoin humanity. That actor's wonderful, Adil, and I just had him on. I co-hosted a show with Chris Jones on Trek FM, The Ready Room, and we had him as a guest, and he's done a lot of interviews. He's a wonderful, wonderful person, and he's in his native New Delhi right now during the lockdown as things exploded in India, and we talked a lot about both his time on the show, and he'd been a Trek fan and what it meant to be part of the Star Trek family, but especially right now how bad it is in India and what he's trying to do as a layperson and organize an oxygen bottle brigade. And he was, and we haven't posted the interview yet. It's coming. That's in advance too. I didn't have a graphic for it. I just realized I should throw that out there so be looking for that. Yeah, there he is. Wonderfully guy. We talk about yoga and acting and the arts and mindfulness and his part on the show but also what's happening in India and how he's aggrieved and what was happening. He was totally safe in his home, lockdown, but like he was talking about 6 or 8 blocks away, there's just, cots lined up of people who can't get into hospitals and how bad it is. And it's spreading to the countryside now where it's even harder to get to people. Yeah. So that's coming. So look for that. It's the Ready Room on Trek FM. I'll have it on my social too. But that first slide, yes. If you're going to Vegas, just to know, especially because we don't know what future setups with Creation and the Rio and whatever will bring, we're going to offer our one-day Valley of Fire tour, the Kirk Memorial Tour out to where Kirk died in Generations. It winds up being about 7 hours. It's an hour there and an hour back, and it's in the heat, but we have a great little plan we do. Some of us in the chat may have been with us already. I think Cairo's been on that, maybe. If you're going to Vegas, if you're happy to go and you're there anyway, come on the day before, Tuesday or Monday night, because we leave at 7 a.m. to beat the heat. And join us. And it's on my you can get to it on my site. Go to my calendar and you can click on it and get the information. Anyway, I just wanted to throw that out. I have some big news coming within a week or two that's even bigger on into the fall.
Ooh.
So I'm just going to tease everybody with that.
Well, I'm going to tease everyone a little bit with promoting my office hours here. So
nice graphic, Ollie. Yes.
Thank you. My friend Bill Wadman is a photographer, and he took that photo.
Really lettering job on that door. That's amazing.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. That was my old apartment in New York, and it was a chalkboard paint, which was one of my favorites. But I noticed Homeless McCoy is here. Homeless McCoy has joined my office hours, and Pee-wee is another member of the Psyche of our community over on the Psych Show. Every Thursday, I do my office hours live at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. Thank you, Jared, for reminding me to talk about this. And for an hour, we just we talk about whatever mental health psychology topics you want to talk about. So if you'd like to join me there, check that out. And I have a new what I do is I record those episodes live there, and I post the highlights on the Psych Show on YouTube. And there's a new episode of the Office Hours talking about how to overcome social anxiety without therapy. Is a new episode I just posted yesterday, so you can check that out over at the Psych Show if you'd like to see what the Office Hours look like. Larry, that sound means it is we've come to the end of another life support lie.
Did you just start the sad music?
I just started the sad music.
Okay.
It's that time of the show. This has been a ton of fun, and there's so much we've been able to explore. Yeah. So Larry, where can people find more about Trekland this week?
Yeah, well, as usual, 1 o'clock Tuesday Pacific, 4 Eastern, 8 and 9 and 10 UK and Europe time. Trekland Tuesdays Live is on every week, and I have a topic every week, and we chat just like this after a bit, and we look at have a couple other regular features. You never know what's going to happen, so I appreciate everybody coming over there. If you're with me, if you're on YouTube right now or wherever you are, please go and like and subscribe to my YouTube channel too, and it's at Larry Nemecek on Twitter is good too. So just stay tuned. LarryNemecek.com is the hub of everything.
Yeah, and folks, speaking of the hub of everything, please subscribe to our podcast. Even if you don't listen to it, subscribe to it. Give it a review.
Yes.
Give it 5 stars. That's going to help more people to discover Life Support Live, not lie. That is a complete 100% truth.
It's Life Support Live. Yeah.
So check that out. And then for more psychology and mental health, check out the Psych Show on YouTube. Feel free to join our office hours. We do that every week, Thursday on the Psyche Discord. You can find a link to that over at the Psych Show as well. And Larry, we're going to be back next week. Folks, we don't know what we're going to talk about. We have no clue. If you got recommendations or topics you'd like us to tackle, let us know in the comments below. We love doing recommendations from the lifer community.
And get on the Facebook page. We run polls and surveys there too.
Yep. That's a great place to stay in contact with us during the week. Larry, this has been a ton of fun. So good to see the new folks here, and I can't wait for next week, Larry.
Whatever it brings, I can't wait for it. Yes.
Yeah, we'll find out. We'll see. Until then, folks, live long and prosper.
Hey, everybody. Trek well.